Officers of Reddit, when has an excusable action turned into a moment of well, now I gotta arrest you? Not my story, but my uncle is a police officer. He was called in for suspicious behavior in an apartment. He and his partner went to knock on the door. The guy opens the door, blunt in hand, talking to some friend in another room. He turns to look at them, realizes they are officers and hides his hand behind his back. My uncle and his partner couldn't hold back a smile and shake of the head, then said alright buddy, and gets out the handcuffs. I know it's not exactly the situation you described, but it's still a good story and my uncle cracks up about it every time he tells the story. I have a similar story with a different ending. At a party, there's a knock on the door and it's the cops. They tell the host someone called with a noise complaint, told him to turn the music down. Then the cop leans in, sniffs, and says, "Do I smell marijuana?" The host's roommate walks by, bottle of liquor in one hand and a lead blunt in the other, yells it's a celebration. In his best Dave Chappelle doing Rick James impersonation. The cop looks like he's been smacked in the face, stammers out, "Well, just try to keep the music down." And that was that. I had a guy falsify his information because he thought he had a warrant. The guy whose information he gave me had a felony warrant. After I slap on the cuffs he tells me he lied and gives me his real information. He did not have a warrant. He did go to jail for falsification though. My father-in-law was police retired. He once had a guy in who gave my address during the intake. Can you imagine as a police officer someone giving your daughter's address? I once drunkenly gave a cop my fake ID instead of my real ID. Then I said, "Oh, can I have that one back?" And he was like, "That one?" Then later to torture me, while driving to jail he attempted to convince me that the LA Clippers deserve to exist. And I thought I'm never drinking again. A friend once got popped by a plainclothes officer who called to her while she was standing on our porch with a drink in her hand. She handed the cops a fake ID. She was underage. She got 3 tickets. We got called to a disorderly guy in a trailer park. We get there, get everything calmed down, get everyone's information, and run sig checks to make sure no one has any warrants. At that, barring someone having a warrant, no one was getting arrested, and we weren't even writing a report. The disorderly guy gives a bad name because he thought he had a warrant. We go to put cuffs on him and gives his real name, and he didn't have a warrant. We arrest him for giving false information. While we're finishing up, the guy decides to slam his on head repeatedly into my SGTS brand new patrol car literally picked up the day before, and it didn't even have 100 miles on it. All caught on video. So now he also gets a destruction of property charge and then goes to hospital for an emergency commitment because after doing that he made suicidal statements. This was a kid I went to school with. He is a whack job and always has been. He was expelled from my middle school for writing bomb threats. A couple years ago, he was 19 I think, a member of his family found a gun that he had and turned it into the police. All he had to do was either ignore it and lose his gun, or go in and prove that he had paperwork to back it up. Instead he chose to go in and claim to be a Homeland Security agent with a fake badge to back it up. Police searched his home and found an arsenal of weapons and explosives. It sounds like that was the better outcome though. If he found some dark corner of 8chan to get radicalized in, he might have actually done something. That's quite lucky that you found out this way. It could been way different if he'd actually used them. Was a cop. Best one that immediately comes to mind was a kid who was speeding. Nothing crazy, just like 10 miles per hour over. Pulled him over and was in the process of giving him a warning when I noticed he had a radar detector. I pointed it and he smiles and confidently says, "It's okay, you can have one if you have a permit." "Do you have a permit?" No. Ticket. "Sorry bud." Had to have a permit for radar detector? To be clear, you can't have one at all, at least not in the state that stop occurred in. He was just trying to be clever and see if I knew the laws. I just love the fact that he only thought one lie ahead. Not an arrest but a citation. I was at house for a burglary call and asked the homie owner where the money had been taken from. He says the end table. I point to one of 2 end tables and ask, "This end table?" He walks to the end table, says, "Yeah, took it right out of this drawer," and opens the drawer. I look at the open drawer and see the burglar was kind enough to leave the home marijuana's half ounce of marijuana. Imagine if they planted the marijuana there because they knew the police would look there after they were called. Would be so next level and such a middle finger to the face. All of my friends are interested in cars and enjoy driving fast and relatively unsafely, whatever. However, usually if you get pulled over, talking to the police officer is usually just yes sir, sorry sir, and more often than not you'll get let off with a slap wrist. Now me and my friend are both English and in Scottish, and one night my friend got pulled over doing 80 miles per hour before the cop even reached his window. He was straight into shouting, "You only pulled me over because I'm English, you racist duck." Unfortunately that was his downfall. £150 fine and 3 points on his license. Not a cop, but saw a guy get escorted off a bus for playing his music device too loudly, and I guess having his feet up on a seat. Wouldn't respond to the driver. When the police had him off of the bus, he went with them calmly. There were 3 cops. They were talking to him, and suddenly he takes a swing at one of them. That was one fast takedown. I would be interested in seeing what his thought process was. What made him think it is a good idea? Think good idea thought process. My criminal justice teacher, a retired officer, has a few stories about how the person decides to argue about the situation instead of cooperating. He's had to take a few aggressive people down, and he's 5'3". If you decide to argue with a cop, you'll just get into more unnecessary trouble. In college, friend got an underage. Cop asked for her license to verify her age. She gave him a fake, with the wrong name, underage, fake ID ticket, and cop took it as far as to pursue identity theft. Still offered me powder, even when I asked if they did a police discount. Ah yes, Sephora employees can be relentless. I feel like they used some of their own product. I learned studying criminal justice in college that police don't have to arrest you for misdemeanors, only obligated to for felonies. Can vary by state city. When you get pulled over for a spreading ticket and manage to talk your way into a life in prison. Charisma. I'm erotically intrigued by a spreading ticket. As a co, I can't help but wonder how many inmates have ended up in my facility over stuff like this. Spent the last hour watching sovereign citizen videos.